Good evening, and thank you for joining me for this edition of the Pulpit, Politics, and People. I am your host, Aliyah Hakeem. This evening, we're going to start a series of conversations concerning women's health. That's going to be conversations concerning women's health. And for the first series, I have attorney Chrissy Mincy with me. We're going to start by talking about women's health and the mind, the emotions, and the will of women in this day and in this time. So, Chrissy is an attorney here in the city of Chattanooga, and she deals mainly in family law. And we're going to talk about the mind of women tonight. We're going to talk about the effects on the minds of women as it pertains to the law, especially family law or domestic issues that come up with the family law. So, Miss Missy, again, she deals mainly with family law, and then she deals with adult criminal offenses, and she deals with juvenile criminal offenses, and then she also deals with juvenile dependency and neglect. So this evening, let's say hello, Miss Missy. Let's say hello to our viewers, and let's get started.
Hello, Leah. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, Miss Mincy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Saudi Daisy. Grew up there, went to Saudi Daisy High School, left, went to LSU. Was not sure what I wanted to do. So, as I was discussing earlier, I ended up with a degree in performance art. My parents were very proud.
Yeah.
I came back and I worked at Rhythm and Brews and worked in the music business for a little while, and then decided I wanted to go to law school.
Awesome.
So I commuted from here to Nashville School of Law for 4 years and got my degree while working 2 jobs here. Was able to graduate. I was very excited when I graduated that I would have one job in one city.
Good
So
deal.
I began working for Bill Speak and Gerald Webb at my graduation once I passed the bar, and was very fortunate to work for them for about 8 years before.
Oh, wow.
Before Mr. Judge Webb took the bench, and then I went to a general civil litigation firm, and I am just now, last month, I went out on my own. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So just now last month, so you worked for Speak and Webb before Judge Webb took the judicial bench for General Sessions Court here in Chattanooga, and you worked for them for 8 years.
Okay.
And then before that, you were in the music business.
Yes.
So how did you come to just make that turn to become an attorney? Was there anything specific to drive your, going into the legal field?
I had always wanted to be an attorney when I grew up. Before in middle school and high school, if you had asked me what I wanted to be, I was going to be a lawyer. And so the music business, I guess, was the detour.
Okay.
So I always was fascinated by the law and its ability to help people, and the fact that it can be difficult to understand. You can argue lots of different sides, but at the end result, the idea is to help people and to create a system of order to help everybody get along. I was always fascinated by that.
Thank you so much for agreeing to this interview, especially with me starting the series of women's health. And we're wanting to concentrate this evening on the mind. And because your specialty is family law, what have you seen that affects women most as far as the law is concerned?
Well, within the family law arena, I mostly deal with women when they're going through some crisis of the family, which is, it's divorce, it's child custody, it's child support issues, it's domestic violence, it's trouble with a child that's in the juvenile delinquency system. Those are the issues that I mostly see with women in their familial relationships.
Okay. So, and I don't mean to sound, biased or anything. Can you give us a percentage of the number of black women and white women you see? Or Hispanic women or Asian women or even Indian?
Oh, I don't know about a percentage. And it varies based on, it's varied quite a bit
Okay.
in my career. So I've, I will say, I don't know if minority communities avail themselves of the law as much. It does seem that it can be more of a last resort
Okay. Okay.
for and not a proactive step.
Wow.
Sometimes.
Okay. That's good. That's good. So, it's not a proactive step. It's not something that they would do before the situation gets terribly bad, or they come to you for help.
Yeah, I would say, and once again, I have a smaller sample size. I don't know, but it seems to be that most of the time, um, I've represented, I come across, it just is more of the system has come to them instead
Okay.
of them coming to the system.
Okay. What are the different types of relationships affecting women that you see in your practice?
Um,
Could it be sister, mother, daughter, uh, besides just husband, wife?
it could be. So a lot of times, if I'm dealing with, or if I'm representing a wife, for example, or a mother, I will have other family members come in. So I will see the relationships between my client and her mother or her sister
Okay.
as a support system.
Okay.
I deal mostly with when there's a crisis involving the child or the spouse.
Okay.
And I more frequently see the other relationships with women as a support system. How effective that support system is varies. Sometimes mama's trying to help and she isn't.
She's not helping, no.
She's not.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, then, so you see women or the mother, sister, or the in support of the wife, mainly?
Or at least trying to. Yeah, a lot of times when I deal mostly with my client, attorney-client communications are quite sacred.
Okay.
So a lot of times I'll have family members come in to be supportive or with the intention of being supportive. Sometimes I have family members drag the person here to make a change. So mama brings her daughter here
Okay.
in order to change something for daughter. So there's not always it's not always a perfect supportive or empowered relationship. But those relationships are mostly in a support nature, what I see regarding litigation.
So when the mother, the wife, comes in to you, have you been able to measure what their mindset is at that time? Are they more the victim, or are they more the um, problem in the relationship? What are you seeing?
Every person's different, and so that's why I typically insist on an in-person or a Zoom consult, given the pandemic.
Okay.
So that I can get as much information about that person and where they are, what is particularly going on with them.
Okay.
So I see women that are victims, I see women that are not. I see women that have strong opinions. I see women that are told what to do. And so the variety of people, and if you think about it, everybody's known somebody that's gone through a tough time. And while there are some common threads, you never know where the person is when they come into my office. So either their husband has been cheating and planning and they've been taken completely off guard, or they've decided they're unhappy and they're here and their husband doesn't know. So you see people on every end of the grief spectrum when they come here to start. So they may have decided, they may be the one deciding to make a change. They may be the one that the system is coming to and they don't want any part of it. So it varies.
So in every situation, you can view it as a grieving situation?
Not every situation. That's mostly in the context of a divorce.
Okay.
Because that's the
Okay.
loss of a marital relationship. And yes, I do think there's a lot of grief that goes into that.
That's
Grief without
interesting.
closure. So you
Yeah,
can see
yeah.
people go through the stages of grief and not knowing where they stand on that spectrum when they first come across me. And understanding that everybody processes that grief differently.
I see.
I don't deal with people that want to see me. I mean,
Wow.
usually my joke is when I walk in and I ask, how are you? The joke becomes, well, probably not the best you've been, because nobody normally likes to come sit in a family lawyer's office.
Yeah.
But knowing where they stand emotionally is very important also in helping them litigation-wise, just because the idea in my advocacy is to try to get them in the real world where they'd like to be. And so knowing where they are, knowing where they'd like to go, and then making those decisions together on how to get there, knowing that the emotional landscape is going to be challenging as well.
So can you break down the dynamics of a relationship that is going to grieve, we're going to grieve, or we're going to break apart from, or a divorce situation, or a child being taken out of the home, or put in, labeled as a neglectful situation? Can you go through the dynamics of separating those and what the woman is going to get out of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into play with that. So where I guess I find that question challenging is what the woman's going to get out of it. I'm not sure what you mean by that, because I see people from every realm of, I have husband's wife come in together and say that this is the decision that we're making. And then I have some people that want to litigate their pain, and they can't get past the anger, and they just want to take them to court. And so I have wives that say, or mothers that say, I want what's best for my child, and I will do whatever it takes for that. I have others that say that think what they're doing is what's best for their child, and it truly isn't. And so, so it's hard to say with that kind of a general practice, I guess, what they kind of get out of it.
Well, what I mean by get out of it is, during the maybe property division, or the bank account situation, or the business aspect of, if a couple were in a business, or who's even going to get custody of the children.
Yes, and so a lot of times the way I try to do it is I try to take the emotion out of it as much as possible. Understand where they are emotionally, so that I know what they need from me, but explain the system to them in a way that they can understand.
Very good.
Because they're out, this is your livelihood, this is your life, and a lot of times the fear of the unknown is overwhelming. Not knowing what you are going to get in a property division, not knowing what you're entitled to, not knowing what should happen for your children, and not knowing what a court would do can be quite scary. So I try to demystify that as much as possible. In a property division, you just determine what the marital property is, and you divide it. The art comes into who gets what and how, but it's dividing business. But that's all it is. If you imagine that on the day you got married, you created a business partnership.
Oh, wow, that's good.
What do you own and what do you owe, and how do we split it up? And so you're dissolving a business partnership with a lot of emotions.
That's excellent. You're dissolving a business partnership with a lot of emotion. And a lot of times, all the time, I tend to think that when women act or react out of emotion, they're acting wrong. Anybody, man or woman, if you're acting or reacting out of emotion, you're acting totally wrong. And we need to be more rational in our decision making when it comes to things like divorce, things like our children, things like our businesses, and things like that. So what would you say to that female or that woman's, her mindset? Does she necessarily have to, like, quote unquote, get herself together before she comes to see you?
No, I take people as they come. I
Okay.
mean, but that's where those relationships, those ancillary relationships with mama and with sister can help.
I
Is
see.
because you raise a very good point. You know, you have to be somewhat logical and rational when you're making decisions, especially decisions that are as important as your family structure, and where your child is when, and how you're going to, make your mortgage payment or your rent payment the next month. Those are decisions that have to be made logically and rationally, but there are a lot of emotions involved. And so it's those support systems that I'm hopeful people have, so that they're not just absorbing all of these emotional situations and not actually allowing themselves to feel it. And so they're not repressing it and it comes out later. But so they actually have the support that I think is needed to process these emotions in a way that's healthy and that doesn't, contradict their legal goals. Because a lot of times people will repress, they'll try to be perfect, and it doesn't work. And so you don't want to have a big blow up that is going to be paraded around court.
Awesome.
So you want to make sure that you're processing those emotions in a healthy manner, and that's why I try to find out where they are, where my client is emotionally, so that we can make sure that they're actually managing their legal health as much as their mental and emotional health as well.
Awesome.
They're creating new evidence every day.
Creating new evidence.
In the family law context, every conversation you have, every conversation you don't have, can be used as evidence.
Wow.
If you're talking to your child's father, if you're choosing not to tell him about a soccer game.
Wow.
If you're telling him about a soccer game, but it's in a terrible tone. I mean, all of these things are, from an attorney standpoint, creating new evidence. So making sure that people understand the framework that they're operating in, I think, is really important to getting them out of the system in a way that they appreciate and gets them the goals that they're looking for.
That was really good. You're creating new evidence. This is the Pulpit, Politics, and People. We're talking with attorney Chrissy Missy of Chattanooga, Tennessee. She's a family law. Her concentration is family law. One last question, Miss Missy. We talked earlier, and you said something about empowerment. What are you, or what is your direction in talking to your various clients? What is your direction as far as empowerment or advocating for those people?
When we were speaking earlier, it was about women that I see mostly, and how there are some women that when I'm asking them at a consult what they're looking for, every answer they have is in relation to someone else. So I'm looking for him to be happy. He said he would do this, or it's in relation to somebody else, and I've noticed over the years that there are some women that have a very hard time, especially at the initial meeting, determining what it is that they want for themselves.
Okay.
And those are very challenging cases, because at the end of my representation, I'm hopeful that my client's in a better real world spot than they were when they walked into my office.
Wow.
And so if somebody doesn't know what they want for themselves, if it's always in relation to someone else, I've found that those are the clients that are the least likely to be happy at the end of the litigation, because they're not doing this for themselves, and they don't know what it is that they want. And they're allowing other systems and other people to dictate their own lives.
Wow.
And that I have found to be part of one of my goals, is I try to empower my clients to understand the laws, understand the likelihood of outcomes, so that they can decide what it is that they want for themselves. They can decide whether they want to go to court. They can decide whether they want to take what action they want to take.
Good.
And it becomes about their decision. And you can only make that decision if you're empowered to know what it is that you want for yourself. as well as what your likelihood of outcomes are, your risks and rewards of each path of action. So a lot of times, especially with women from abusive situations, or it just becomes they don't know what they want, and so trying to help them gain the skills and the voice to determine what they want is I think a central role of advocacy in the family law arena.
So I heard two things. For that woman to know what she wants,
Mm-hmm.
could that be confused with her sacrificing or her thinking that she's sacrificing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There are a lot of women, and I think it's part of ingrained into the gender identity.
Right. Okay.
Is the sacrificial nature of parenting and the mothering responsibility in
Right.
particular.
Uh-huh.
And I do think that there are a lot of times that women think they're sacrificing themselves for the greater good.
That is so good. Yeah.
But sometimes they aren't. And knowing, I think sacrifice is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very powerful, and it can be a beautiful trait. If you know what you're sacrificing and you're doing it willingly for a goal, and that is a likelihood of outcome, and you're doing it knowing that this could or could not happen, but I'm going to do it willingly.
Wow.
There's too often that people, I think, are just taught to sacrifice and roll over.
Wow.
And that doesn't always work out.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, are some of the sadder cases.
Yeah. So, any last words, any advice, any thoughts for the client or potential client that may come to you, or some of the clients that you already have, or just to our watching audience? Any last words? Because you brought up some very good points, especially about the woman or the female being empowered in the situation and not thinking that it's more of a sacrifice and giving up a part of her or something that she doesn't know she wants, but she really does want. So another question would be, how directive are you in advising someone to get therapy or counseling?
Oh, I'm a big proponent of counseling and
Uh-huh.
therapy.
Mhm.
I mean, I have a therapist. She's wonderful. I think everybody needs to make sure that they put their own self-care at the forefront
Good,
as well.
good.
And it's so often that you don't. I do believe that knowledge is power. And
It is.
so
It is.
I think that, as far as last words go, I want people to be, I don't want people to be determined by fear or to be ruled by their fear
Uh-huh.
or by the unknown. And so a lot of times, speaking to that empowerment angle is that a lot of times people are afraid of people making threats, or they think they know something because their girlfriends told them that this is what happened in another scenario. And sometimes people are right and sometimes they're wrong. And so I just encourage people to seek out actual knowledge, especially if it's something that's bothering them. So what am I going to get? What's likely to happen with my child if I stay, if I go?
I see.
Try to find somebody that you can trust to give you the right advice based on experience and knowledge.
Well, it's kind of hard to get factual knowledge and information from street talk. I'm going thug. A little street talk, because we all talk to one another, and some of us get advice and information that's wrong advice, and it's wrong information, especially about maybe child support. Child support is whenever it is instituted. And then I think we were talking earlier that some women think that at the age of 12, a child can make a decision as to where or who he wants to live with, meaning butch parent.
And that type of misinformation is so rampant.
Wow.
And I do think that people should be talking to each other. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
value in learning from everybody else's experiences
Good.
and sharing those. But there's also misinformation that gets spread for, child support and the 12-year-old. I've had so many clients that'll come and set a consult, and I'll walk in and they say, okay, my son's turning 12 in 6 months and he wants to live with me.
Oh.
And so this should be easy. that's I have to explain
Yeah.
that at 12 that's just one factor out of a list of 15.
Oh, wow.
That 12-year-olds don't get to make their own decisions. They can't even drive.
No.
So
You're right.
So making sure you understand, and question even conventional wisdom. So, and question me. I tell my clients, please, if I've said something that doesn't sound, I'm not infallible. I'm not perfect. So, question everything. That's my
Awesome. This has been an awesome interview. I am so appreciative of you, Miss Mincy. This has been so informative, and this has been an absolute great start to the first series of the Pulpit Politics and People exploring women's health. We're going to go through the mind, we're going to go through the emotions, and we're going to go to the woman's will. So join us next week when I'll have more guests to talk about the women's health, mind, emotion, and will. And we'll see you then. This is Aaliyah Hakeem with the Pulpit, Politics, and People. Be blessed, and please take every opportunity to be a blessing. If I could